from a performance standpoint, we have about 130 times the output versus a field farmer, meaning what we could do in 1 acre, it would take 130 acres out in the field. We also use 0 pesticides, herbicides, fungicides.
A lot of people say, you know, I hate the idea of farming in buildings because it's not natural. I love them when they say that. I just love to hear that. Why? Because farming is not natural.
It is estimated that by the year 2040, the world population will reach 9 billion, the majority city dwellers. How will they have access to fresh food and in a sustainable way?
When I was born, which was in 1940, there were 2.6 billion people alive. And today, there are 7.4 billion people alive. And this is within my lifetime.
In the year 2000, Professor Dixon Despommier of Columbia University, New York, asked his students what they would like the world to look like in 2040, when there will be over 9 billion mouths to feed.
We'd like to work on rooftop gardening. And we want to see how many people we can feed inside New York City. I said, New York City, that's a big place. You know, it's 8 million plus people. I said, why don't you limit your study to Manhattan? It's about 2 million people. They presented their report to me and they said, you know, we can only feed 2% of Manhattan this way. We're doomed. There's no hope. No, you did a great job. You went in not knowing what the answer was. You did the science and you found out that that approach will only feed 2% of the population. But I said, what if you took your good idea and made it a better idea by moving a rooftop garden in the building itself? That's all I said.
All over New York, urban farming is on the rise in various shapes and forms. One of these urban farms is Square Roots in Brooklyn, founded by Tobias Peggs and Elon Musk's younger brother, Kimball. After making money with internet companies, they now invest in a platform where a new generation of urban farmers is learning how to grow produce locally in their own shipping container.
So this is the Square Roots farm, right? I call this extreme urban farming, right? Over here we have a housing project. This is where Jay-Z, the rapper, actually grew up and, you know, spent his formative years. This is kind of as urban farming is ever going to get. Inside each of these shipping containers is the equivalent of a 2-acre outdoor field, right? So if you imagine a 2-dimensional field, a farm, and then you turn that on its end and you hang that field off the ceiling and rack it 256 times, right? That's what's going on inside these farms. So now you're farming in 3 dimensions instead of 2 dimensions. So you can get a lot more food out of a way smaller space. And we can see a pathway where, like the internet, went from very difficult to completely doable in 10 years. The same thing is now happening with urban farming. It's pretty difficult today, there's no doubt about it. But the winds are with us, and this is inevitable, right? We will grow a ton of food in the middle of the city with very favorable economics very, very soon.
So you've got 7.3 billion people, and they require the size of South America in land mass to grow their food. That's their agricultural footprint. If you add another 3 billion people to that, you need the size of Brazil in addition. And the size of Brazil land mass doesn't exist. We don't have that much more land to farm. So when those next 3 billion people arrive over the next 30 to 40 years, where will their food come from?
This is AeroFarms, a massive indoor vertical farm in Newark, New Jersey.
Our mission is to build farms in cities all over the world so people have access to fresh, great tasting, highly nutritious food.
Crops are stacked more than 30 feet high inside this 30,000 square foot space. They're grown using aeroponic technology.
Typically in indoor growing, the roots sit in water and one tries to oxygenate the water. Our key inventor realized that if we missed nutrition to the root structure, then the roots have a better oxygenation.
AeroFarm says the root misting system allows them to use 95% less water than a regular field farm. They also use no pesticides or herbicides. Instead of soil, plants are grown in reusable cloth made from recycled plastic. And instead of the sun, there are rows and rows of specialized LED lighting.
A lot of people say, sunless, wait, plants need sun. In fact, the plants don't need yellow spectrum, so we're able to reduce our energy footprint by doing things like reducing certain types of spectrum.
This sophisticated climate-controlled system cuts the growing cycle in half, so crops can be grown all year round, but with a much smaller impact on the environment.
There's all these stresses on our planet. 70% of our freshwater contamination comes from agriculture. About 70% of our freshwater usage goes to agriculture. 1/3 of our arable land has been degraded in the last 40 years. All these macro trends point to the fact that we need a new way to feed our planet.
The two different paradigms in food today is industrial food, which is frankly food that doesn't taste very good. It's high calorie, low nutrients, and real food is a way to think about food that is better for you and tastes better. The opportunity we have, the challenge we have in front of us is real food for everyone. And technology now enables it to be delicious. It's certainly better tasting than food that's shipped across the country. And in a city like New York, almost everything is shipped across the country for most of the year. And so we came up with this idea to do indoor farming in the city. And we're doing it in Brooklyn, 10 farms, the same containers you see on the back of ships. We turn them into an indoor farm, the equivalent of a 2-acre outdoor farm in the heart of Brooklyn.
All right, now back to Brooklyn.
So it is the dead of winter, and I am in a parking lot in the middle of Brooklyn where there are currently 10 shipping containers that are growing a variety of produce. These guys aren't using any soil, and they're using as much water as we typically use in our daily showers, which is crazy to me. Let's take a look inside. Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Good. Well, so this is your farm.
This is my farm.
How many things are you growing in here?
We have arugula, radicchio, minutina, pak choi, kale, lettuces.
When you think about farming in the middle of a city, you've really got to think about resources in a very different way, right? The first resource you think about is space. So this farm is built inside a 320 square foot shipping container, but on an annual yield basis, you're able to get as much food as you would do from a 1 or a 2 acre outdoor farm. It's kind of crazy how much food you can grow in a very tiny footprint.
They also control the climate, so they can grow anything all year round.
Yeah, this is some of the new stuff I've seeded, which is pretty cool. In the middle, I have a lettuce mix, 6 different varieties. This climate allows me to grow multiple things, and I personally am just really excited to try a bunch of stuff. I have some strawberries and poppies at the front of the farm that are really cool. They're pretty adorable. They're just the leaves right now. I get really excited about it, but you know.
The next resource that you really think about is water usage. So in these systems, water drips down through the irrigation system. It's mixed with the right level of nutrients. Gravity does its thing and feeds the plant. And then the water is all captured in a tray at the bottom and is then recirculated. In fact, this whole farm runs on about 8 gallons of water a day, which is like less than your shower.
And that's 95% less water than an outdoor farm would use.
It's like you have an entire forest in here. I love it.
These look good.
This is like the first time in a while that I've been craving a salad.
It's got a little bit of like a zing at the end.
Yeah, good. Okay, cheers.
The other resource that we think about is electricity, right, and energy. So you'll notice these pink lights all over the farm. The reason for that is that actually the spectrum of light that the plant uses is the red and the blue spectrum. It doesn't need all of the other colors, right? And so what we do is we only push in the frequency of light that the plant needs to grow.
Despite this, energy use overall is still a problem. In fact, 50% of Square Root's costs go to electricity. This is an issue many indoor farms have run into, and some have had to close because of it.
All of these projects are important, but in order to do it, they need to heat, they need to have lights, and so there's so much energy costs to grow locally. So a small scale one is never going to be able to be sustainable economically.
And so is this the most energy efficient that it could be, or is there kind of room for improvement?
Oh, there's so much room for improvement. We are at the very, very early beginning stages of this whole industry, right? I would love to figure out how we put solar on the roof of the farms, right? So we can take these farms completely off the grid. So literally every day, we're thinking about ways to make this more sustainable and more cost effective, quite frankly.
So what is the solution in a city like New York where so much of our produce is coming from quite far away?
I think that any project that engages with our food and the human connection with people understanding where their food comes from is great. But it's still not a solution to be able to feed a city of 8+ million people. Even if it's heavily funded, even if the price drops, it's still one solution, but not the only solution.
To be honest, what this has made me realize is that I think I really do want to go into farming. Given the growing population and densification of cities, like, we don't really have a choice. We can't just not grow enough food for the people that are living here. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that this is definitely part of the future of food.